People could not wait to get a glimpse of Sherri Papini, this woman who had survived statistically what most people do not: abduction and torture. And little by little, we got glimpses of Sherri coming out of her kids' daycares and schools. It was reported she was doing a lot of therapy, and for a moment, it looked like Sherri might get her life back. That was until that DNA profile came back with a match, and it matched to her ex-boyfriend. The police go to his house, where he pretty much welcomes them in and tells them he has a story they probably want to hear. He claims that Sherri had reached out to him, and she had given him a burner phone for the two to communicate. Side note, if you find yourself in your personal life having to use a burner phone, it is a red flag, and you should probably change course. Sherri told him a story of how Keith, her husband, was raping and abusing her all the time. She was a damsel in distress, and that ex-boyfriend, well, he came to the rescue. He drove 7 hours and picked her up off the side of the road, and then 7 hours back to his 2-bedroom apartment. Whereupon, going inside, she picked a bedroom and asked him to board up the windows in it, and he did. He claims for the next 22 days that nothing romantic happened, that the two of them just kind of hung out. But he said she did start to act a little weird. She cut off her hair at some point. She stopped eating. She appeared to be getting thinner, and she did start to have marks showing up on her body. I feel like he realized that he was in quite the situation, that he had a missing woman in his apartment, and he didn't really know what to do. If he contacted the police, Sherri could have easily said that he had abducted her. Who would have believed this crazy story? So he obliged her strange request. She asked him to fire hockey pucks at her legs, and he did. She asked him to fire a pellet gun at her, and he did. And then she asked him to go to Hobby Lobby with cash and buy a wood-burning tool. And when he got back, she had picked out a design. She asked for him to burn Exodus onto her, a branding, if you would. From what I read, there's a verse that talks about kidnapping. And then she was ready to go home at some point, and he dropped her off on the side of that road she was found on. And according to him, they never spoke again. The police confront Sherri with this information, and she at first tries to deny it, but the gig was up for Sherri. If you have an extra 30 minutes, I suggest watching this interview. It's extremely entertaining. Keith at some point gets up and leaves. He has also had enough of this. Sherri has to admit it. She goes before a judge and she pleads guilty to 34 counts of mail fraud and 1 count to lying to the FBI. She says to the judge, she tells him, "Your Honor, I am guilty. I am guilty of lying. I am guilty of dishonor. What is done, and it cannot be erased." Sherri was ordered to pay back the $30,000 to the state's compensation board, $150,000 towards the police searches, and $128,000 she received in disability payments. Keith filed for divorce, and he is seeking full custody of the children. And currently, Sherri is sitting inside of a San Bernardino prison, serving out an 18-month sentence. For some reason, I have a hard time believing that we have heard the last of Sherri Papini, and I have a feeling that she might, at some point in the future, have a new story to tell.